And we are live, my friend.
We're live. All right. Today we have on the In the Ring live stream, we have Josh Walter. He's the CEO and co-founder of BrandJump. BrandJump was launched in 2011, and over the last 9 years, BrandJump has become the leading e-commerce sales and marketing firm in the home furnishings industry. Josh was also recently recognized by Home Furnishings Business Magazine, one of the leading publications in the home furnishing space, as a 40 under 40 leader. Congrats to you, sir. Recognized the 40 top leaders in the industry under 40 years old. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, guys. Excited to be here.
All right. Well, let's just start off with a little bit about you. Just a quick bio and tell us a little bit about yourself, but don't give everything away. We want to save a little bit, but just tell us about yourself, what you're all about.
I'll make it short and sweet. So I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California. Went to undergrad at the University of Iowa after a very fun college experience, but 4 very cold winters. Came back to Southern California, received my JD MBA at Pepperdine in 2008. While I am a member of the California Bar, while I was in school, decided that I didn't want to practice at all, but instead find a path to really building and growing my own business. So I co-founded BrandJump about 10 years ago. I still live in LA with my wife and 2 young children. I have 4 and 5-year-old girls, and they've both had me wrapped around their fingers since since the days they were born.
Gotcha. I want to circle back to how you got from law into e-commerce, but first, why don't you tell us a little bit about BrandJump and what it can do for e-commerce merchants?
Yeah, absolutely. So BrandJump's an e-commerce sales and marketing team. So we're not an internet retailer. We don't buy and sell products. We're a services company, and we work for manufacturers exclusively in the home furnishings industry by creating and executing their wholesale e-commerce strategies. So our clients are manufacturers of lighting, furniture, and decor, and our mutual customers are major internet retailers throughout the US that sell those products, whether it be Wayfair, Amazon, Target, Home Depot, etc. So we are charged with growing the business of these retailers on behalf of the manufacturers that hire us. We have a merchandising team, we have a creative team, and a channel management team. So we get product online, we build content, we create marketing opportunities with these internet retailers, ultimately really with the goal of driving the strategic partnerships between brand and retailer to maximize volume potential. And what really makes us unique is that our team comes from the e-commerce space, so former merchants and buyers who really have a deep understanding of how to best engage each partnership. So in short, you can think of us as the wholesale e-commerce arm on behalf of the manufacturer clients that we work with.
Okay, so that's a very top level description. Can you get a little more granular and talk about exactly what you give to the merchant? Like what is a good example when you say a marketing program or some content? What type of content do you guys generate?
So from a merchandising standpoint, manufacturers give us the product information that they have, so specs, imagery, etc. We enhance that information, and then we load it into each of the individual internet retailers' formats that are required. So whether it be Vendor Central, Seller Central, Wayfair's portal, Home Depot's portal, or whatever it may be. Our creative team enhances that content. So work with about 10 different freelance copywriters. They're managing, building out brand stores, doing A+ content, way more content with Wayfair. We're helping with product descriptions when they need to be tailored to specific internet retailers. We do product titles, help from an SEO standpoint. And then from a marketing perspective, we are, where those internet retailers that have buyers and category managers, we are specifically engaging them and driving the strategic partnership. So whether it's fulfillment opportunities, whether it's promotional opportunities, because we work across different styles, categories, brands, and price points, we make recommendations to the manufacturer as to how they should partner and drive their businesses with these retailers, and then they make those decisions, and then we execute that strategy on their behalf.
It's very interesting. So here's the question now. I'm going to circle back. You went from, if I understand correctly, you went to law school, or you were going to be a lawyer, or how did you get in? How did you go from getting out of school to getting into furniture e-commerce specifically?
Yeah. So I'll keep this as brief as possible because it could be a longer version of the story. So I went to law school, not entirely sure what I wanted to do with my life, but I knew that if it was something that was in business, that the law degree would help. And if it was something in law, obviously a law degree would be important. A couple years into the law program, decided to get my MBA because I was much more interested in the business route. And through that, decided that I wanted to find an entrepreneur-run business that I could learn, grow with, and then basically scale. Long story short, I joined a small decorative lighting sales agency in Southern California about a year and a half before BrandJump was born. In the decorative lighting business, manufacturers have agencies that are geographically based all over the country, and those sales agencies are responsible for growing manufacturers' businesses in multiple channels. So brick and mortar, health, hospitality, restaurants, office spaces. And at that time, 11 years ago, those agencies, so our Southern California agency was also responsible for e-commerce because manufacturers at that time considered them retail. So I was personally responsible for growing the businesses for a handful of small internet retailers that are geographically based in Southern California. And the owner of this agency and I quickly realized that the needs of these retailers were far different from brick and mortar retailers, and that the traditional agencies were not supporting them properly in other parts of the country. So we started by speaking to our lighting clients about the idea of managing all of their e-commerce business across the country based on our success with those that are in Southern California. A number of them gave us a shot. The person that I worked for at the time, we formed BrandJump together as a separate entity. And then now 10 years later, we're in multiple categories within the home and work with about 30 manufacturers and 75 to 100 internet retailers.
Wow, it's a great story. Not a direct line from law school to business, but I know a few almost lawyers that did the same thing. And in every example, they made the right choice. They thought, law, I'm going to do good things. And they went, oh my God, it's so boring. They wound up becoming very, very successful business people. So maybe there's a correlation there. So what are the benefits of centralizing an e-commerce channel management strategy? That's a lot of words there, but if you could break that down for our audience.
Sure. So, so as I mentioned earlier, manufacturers in the home furnishing space, they have traditionally had their territory reps manage their e-commerce accounts. And what this meant was for a very fragmented strategy all over the country. And while each of these internet retailers, as you guys know, whether it's Amazon, Wayfair, Home Depot, and others, they all have independent strategies, there's a real need to centralize the management of their businesses in terms of what's required for manufacturers to support them. So, when you think about merchandising and content, these are things that, while they should be tailored to each internet retailer, still must be consistent from the source. So product information, imagery, descriptions, they need to come from one place. And if they don't, the brand can be represented considerably differently all over the internet. So from a branding standpoint, centralization is key. And when you think about marketing strategies, it's equally as important. So each retailer, they have different marketing strategies, different events, but a centralized approach allows for more control over how the brand is being promoted, where, and then how that impacts other channels of distribution, which are very sensitive in the home furnishing space when it comes to like contract and hospitality and whatnot.
Do you get involved in the creative process? And I'm going to speak more on that creative side of it. Like, do you find a client and you say, your brand assets may be suffering, we're here to help? Or do you just kind of say, all right, that's what it is and we have to work with it? Or how involved do you get in that?
I would say that it's somewhere in the middle. So the brand, they have their images, they have their specs, they have, some form of descriptions. And we certainly enhance those and tailor them to the needs of our mutual e-commerce partners. There are some internet retailers that require 5 bullet points, instead of, or versus 3. There are some that require keywords on the back end versus keywords on the front end. And we take what we have and we are forced in many ways to enhance it. I would say part of the future of what we want to be as a company is we want to, at the brand level, work to enhance it even more. Making that information SEO friendly across all channels, so that we can then take that information and then tailor it. So right now we're doing a hybrid of that, but we have a little bit of room to grow there over time.
All right, I got one more design question, because this is something that I was involved in for years. You deal with a client that hands you, let's just say, not optimal assets. What do you do then? Do you basically say, hey,
do you mean like images?
Yeah, images or whatever. I guess especially images if you're talking about furniture. So you have maybe someone that says, here's our assets, and it's some subpar photography. Do you have to sit them down and say, maybe we got to reshoot this, or how do you work around that?
Absolutely. So, I mean, we serve as their wholesale e-commerce arm. So if we're not actually doing something like taking the images ourselves, or, whether it's traditional photography or CGI, we are providing best practices. So something that we've done is we've taken like best practice image decks from a Wayfair or an Amazon or an Overstock or others. And we've basically taken that, combined it, and turned it into our own version that we can share with a manufacturer so they can really nail it on all fronts. So very much a part of our job is to act as consultant to help them elevate their game. And then we're also executing how that works its way into the e-commerce channel, even if we're not actually specifically taking the photos.
It's actually super interesting. And I know a lot of other brand categories that could benefit from this type of service. Have you ever considered branching out or starting a different subsidiary? Like, why just furniture? Is that because you can be the specialist in that area, or is it you haven't branched out into other segments yet?
So I would say a few reasons. I would lead with, when we think about a 5-year plan, and how we continue to scale our business, there's absolutely a consideration of looking at product categories outside of the home. That said, we work with in a 10-year period, which is quite a long time from an e-commerce standpoint. We're only working with 30 manufacturers. So our investment with each of these clients is tremendous. And we really attach ourselves to them, and we become almost like internal employees, and we really become their full-scale e-commerce team. And 30 manufacturers across 5 different categories leaves an immense amount of room for growth for us, even within the home. And in order to maintain a profitable business model, or one way to maintain the profitable business model is not necessarily exponentially expanding our customer base. So within Wayfair, that makes up a considerable amount of our business, or a Home Depot or a Target or Walmart, while they certainly do carry other product categories, we've gotten so specialized within home that it makes a lot of sense for us, and there's so much room to grow by just tacking on additional brands that those specific internet retailers carry. As opposed, we'd have to hire a bunch of other account managers that are specialized with other internet retailers if we went into the fashion category, for example, right, even though certainly there are some crossover. So I think that, it's not a 2020 strategy, particularly with what's happening, from a COVID standpoint and the COVID demand, so to speak. But certainly as we look towards, maybe back half of 2021, 2022, it's something that we're definitely going to consider.
Yeah, and it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all thing. So something that may work in the furniture channel might not work so well in fashion or other types of categories. So I understand that. It's just super interesting that you guys are just so focused on that one category, but I can understand the strategy. So getting back, touch briefly on dealing with the COVID situation. How are your customers responding to this quote-unquote new normal? Like, we've watched e-commerce explode over the last 10, 12 weeks. How is the furniture space faring? I mean, I would imagine you have a lot of bored people shopping and a lot of remodeling. I would think that category is really exploding right now. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's exploding as well for probably some of the reasons that e-commerce is exploding overall. But then there are also some additional specific reasons why home online is so strong. And I think that that's really evidenced when you look at the performance of companies like a Wayfair and Overstock who specialize in that category. And if you think about it, and I've shared this with friends, online retailers of home, they couldn't have dreamed up a more advantageous situation for them. So, I mean, think about it for a second. Like, so if you're an internet retailer of home, if you're like a Wayfair, for example, could you come up with a better way to grow your business than to say, what if there was this situation where
everybody's
all
home,
stores were closed or not appealing to be in? The tax deadline was delayed to July 15th, and then there was stimulus, so putting more money into people's pockets that were employed. People can barely go on vacation. They're spending less money on restaurants. They're certainly not going to concerts and sporting events. And on top of that, they're confined to their homes. And in many cases, they'll be working from home forever. So if you are lucky enough to be employed, you have more discretionary income for home purchases, and you're staring at your home that needs improvement, and you have nowhere to shop. So we've seen this translate. I mean, our business in May was up 35%. Our business in June was up 50%, and that's across 30 manufacturers in all different categories of home. And July seems like it's coming in at around 40%. And the trends aren't generation specific either. It's not only millennials that are moving into their first homes and having families, and that was already a growing segment. I mean, I read that 12% of people over 65 are now moving online. Like that's amazing, right? Like I was at my parents' house the other day, and my mom was shopping for an umbrella, and and she's in that age range, and where do you think she was looking, right? She was looking on the front gate, and the challenge for her was, while it was the only place that she was going to look, she still was having trouble trying to figure out how to navigate the site. So like there's an element of adoption that's being forced there, obviously. And I think that I would end it by saying the way our brands are responding is that the channel conflict that they once dealt with is diminished tremendously, right? They're being extremely supportive. Like the handcuffs that we had on us in some cases are being removed. And right now, one of their biggest challenges is making sure that they have enough inventory for the channel, right? Because they lower their purchasing dramatically because of the unpredictability of COVID. And they're not going to be in the spot that they want to be in until fourth quarter.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we've seen that. Bart, you can chime in on this. Other clients of ours and other segments dealing with supply shortages, adjustments. But while their business is literally blowing up, it's booming. It's a strange place to be in.
Yeah, it certainly is.
COVID realities aside, what other trends do you see in e-commerce today?
So, I think that COVID, non-COVID, any business out there, regardless of industry, will have to have a digital presence. Anybody that got away with it prior will really struggle, regardless of the size of their company and regardless of how great their brand is. And as I mentioned earlier, the change that we're experiencing is not generation specific like it otherwise once was. In terms of trends, I think that something that we are all together already seeing in the news is that those large brick and mortar retailers that will survive, right? We don't need to talk about the ones that are obviously going away. Those that are surviving and are very strong, they're going to decrease their physical footprint, considering considerably in terms of number of locations, of course, and then probably size of those locations over time. I think that the other thing that's happening is that the product page online, it's there was a time that it was really picture and price. And it's really moving to best-in-class digital packaging that is truly, it's unmatched, in a store. Multiple images, videos, 360-degree, views, augmented reality, and eventually, when I think about home, like virtual reality would be an incredible thing. I mean, augmented reality has already been a game changer, but virtual reality would just be nuts. I think speedy delivery, while I think during COVID, customers have a higher tolerance for longer lead times right now. I think that's really short term. Speedy delivery is really going to transcend all product categories. So, when I think about the space that I'm in, custom upholstered furniture, that's something that people have always had a tolerance for longer lead times. That's really going away. And if manufacturers can't figure out how to get into that 1 to 2 day delivery, regardless of category and price point, I think that they're really going to suffer. And then lastly, I think that smaller pure play internet retailers are really going to struggle, and they're going to fade away. Those that really only competed on price. There will still be smart, small, curated niche sites that have a voice, and that because they've learned to talk to their customer. But if it's really something where they've just done a good job, as a seller on Amazon or through Google Shopping and whatnot, where they once could have a business out of it, I think that goes away completely.
Yes, and you have right. That's a good point. You have your niche chains like make it restoration hardware, like those little stores that sell very expensive high end stuff. I think they'll always exist, but I think the mom and pops and the small chains are either going to have to, as you said, smaller footprint or just go away completely, which is unfortunate. But one thing that was always fascinated me about furniture e-commerce, it's always seemed to be challenging in that consumers are traditionally were hesitant in buying something as big as important as a sofa, and now that barrier has broken down. How has that evolved? Is it just from trial and error? How do you think we got here? Obviously, when you say first-in-class digital packaging, where you're talking about VR and things like that let you get closer to the product, but it's still not the same. Like I always had a problem with buying a mattress online because it's like a thing that you're going to use all the time and you can't touch it. How do you overcome that hurdle?
So I think it's really it's some of the things that you've said, but it's really a convergence of a number of different things that internet retailers have done to truly elevate the shopping experience and focus on the customer. So when you think about the furniture industry, it is a very SKU heavy, long tail industry. It's not like it's 3 great toasters that sell 100 million units a day, right? So most brands that we work with have between 5,000 and 10,000 unique SKU combinations, and that doesn't even include the custom ones. So we work with a custom upholstery manufacturer, and they have like 10,000 fabric options. So you can imagine exponentially what that looks like. So internet retailers, they not only offer selection, but their searching tools and their filters and algorithms have gotten smarter and smarter. And home is a very personal shopping experience. It's not like buying a new computer monitor. It's a considered purchase. And going somewhere online that not only gives you the chance to select price point, size, color, material, but also has a product page that has AR integrated into it so the customer can see what a coffee table looks like while they're sitting on their couch, in front of their couch. And if you combine that with customer reviews, the customer review element, it allows you to remove some of the touch and feel element that you referenced. Put that all together, and if you can ship a sofa in 2 days, that's $5,000. It's hard to consider even thinking about going back to a store once you've tested the waters there. And I think that now that people are tasting that otherwise would not have because of the COVID, forced, things that are happening. I don't see things going back to where they once were.
Yeah, no, great answer. We totally agree with that. All right, let's talk a little about marketing. We noticed that BrandJump took advantage of the captive eyeballs at home and sponsored a webinar series was aimed at the manufacturers and players in the home furnishing space. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks for asking. So with all the challenges that are taking place in the industry, and what we were just talking about, the growing evidence of an accelerated behavioral shift online, we felt that there was really an opportunity to help to try and better educate the industry on the key components of creating an e-commerce strategy. So like we kind of did an e-commerce 101, but then it transitioned into strategies that became more complex depending on where a manufacturer was in their embracement of e-commerce. So we started with the fundamentals, how to set up your e-commerce program on the front end. So product assortment, pricing policies, how to select a retailer, like who do you want to partner with, and then things to consider when thinking about what resources are required to upload products online. The second webinar was operational best practices. So back-end strategies that include like inventory feed management, transactional processes, replenishment forecasting, and then even thinking about how to achieve 2-day delivery if you don't have multiple fulfillment centers yourself. And then we finished, our third webinar was online content marketing strategies. So enhanced content promotions and, like really how to partner with internet retailers at the channel level when you're driving promotional campaigns, and then how to work with them individually and how to mix all of that together. And we were, we were blown away by the attendance. So the timing was obviously right.
Captivating.
We had attendees from retailers, from manufacturers, and we had like leadership teams of each of these that were attending. It was pretty exciting for us.
That's great. That sounds really good. So, what's your overall customer acquisition strategy? Like, how do you pitch a client? What's the thing what's the one thing that you sell them, and how do you find clients? Is it referrals, or is it just,
Yeah, so we have a pretty specific client profile, and in the early years, as we were building the business, we pounded the pavement. We went to lots of trade shows. We would speak to manufacturers that we believed were a good fit. And in the early years, it was really a numbers game. And while we still specifically target certain manufacturers as we grew, the uniqueness of our model allowed the word of mouth and referrals to become very critical to our growth. And over the last 2 years, we've really shifted to more of a strategic, proactive outbound marketing strategy through a really great PR firm that we work with, and they've really helped us build our brand in the home furnishings industry outside of just that little lighting category that we started in. In terms of how we actually speak to them and what we're selling, so to speak, it's selling a channel management strategy. So what makes our business model unique is that we are looking at, how do you take a $5 to $10 million online business across 15 different internet retailers and grow it to 30 million? That's very different than others out there that have similarities to us that are Amazon specific agencies that are specifically trying to grow an Amazon business. Ours is really about how do you take this channel and make it much more significant. And our team comes from that space, right? So we have 4 people from Wayfair, 1 from Amazon, 1 from Overstock, 3 from One Kings Lane, 3 from Target. We have hired a team around the country that understands what's under the hoods of these retailers so they can better drive and create the path of least resistance to help these manufacturers really grow. And that becomes the ultimate selling point is really this kind of turnkey approach that we can offer a manufacturer.
Yeah, and it sounds like your team is a big selling point there in that they have experience in the channel. But who is your competition? Do you compete against just straight up advertising agencies, or who is your competition? Since you are so focused on the one channel, who would compete against you?
So
you don't have to be specific, but like what type of agent? Like is it advertising agent?
I hate people that say this, but I mean I'm going to say it anyway. In terms of our core model, this channel management business where we essentially operate as the e-commerce arm on behalf of these brands, and we execute the merchandising, creative, and the daily marketing strategy from an e-commerce standpoint, we have not found a direct competitor to that model. Now that said, there's a lot of competition with aspects of the model, right? So we use a PIM in our merchandising strategy. There are tons of PIMs out there, like a Salsify, and others, right?
Mm-hmm. So can you explain what a PIM is?
Yeah, so PIM is product information management, and we are actually, to be fully disclosing, we're about 85% of the way through our implementation of bringing technology into this technology into our business. So what it is it's a centralized platform that you can store all of your digital assets, so specs, imagery, etc. And it allows you to have a better understanding of what you have and what you don't have that's required to get products up online to certain retailers. It helps you better organize information. And then some of the really good PIM software systems, they have connectors or APIs where they can work directly with the internet retailer so that once you build out those specs and imagery, it'll create a certain degree of automation to connect directly into Amazon's Vendor Central and Seller Central.
So you change something in the PIM and it's automatically reflected across the board.
It's not necessarily uploaded, but you can track that you can then push the button to upload it, essentially.
Got it.
Right. Depends on my PIM. Are you building PIM? Is that what's happening, or are you just gonna integrate to other PIMs that are out there?
So we have found a PIM of the dozens that exist out there that made the most sense for our model. So it's not so that the PIM is not proprietary. How we're using it and integrating into our overall business, that's the proprietary aspect of it. So I think that
Gotcha.
going back to your question of like what's the competition? So we manage Amazon businesses on behalf of brands. There are Amazon specific agencies. They compete against us for that piece of it, but the channel management part is what makes us most unique.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. I understand a little bit better now. All right. So let's talk about your business. You guys, I understand your company's private. Are you looking for investment, or are you just plowing everything back into the business and trying to grow organically, or what's your plan?
Yeah, I would say, primarily the latter. We are private. We're fortunate to not have any debt. A mentor of mine a long time ago said, debt is the enemy, treat it as such. And I've always, kind of taken that to heart. But that said, we've been really focused on, reinvesting the cash flow into both talent and technology, especially as of late with technology. And, I would say never for outside investments, but we enjoy being in a position where we are the ones that control, our own destiny. Yeah,
no, I agree with that. So what are the big challenges, risks, or pain points that BrandJump is facing right now? I mean, besides the COVID thing and businesses exploding, what's kind of challenges you have in front of you?
Yeah, with the advent of COVID, our risk factors have changed quite a bit. So as it stands today, our single largest risk is I hate to say this, the solvency of our clients. Right. So we may be managing 20% of a manufacturer's revenue, but if the other 80% is struggling, our risk is that their e-commerce businesses don't keep them afloat. Thankfully, home furnishings in general has picked back up over the last 60 days, which is really nice and kind of interesting, given some of the things I said earlier, across all channels. But our concern is lessened over the last 60 days, but COVID is far from over. So we're watching things pretty carefully. I would say that right now our biggest challenge and pain point is properly and profitably managing the growth of the business. So we have an extremely high cost of labor. And then obviously the technology investments are significant as well. And, we're continuing to really invest to meet the demands of our clients, which are only growing given the acceleration of what's happening right now. And it's a delicate balance.
Yeah. So I'll mark you down as cautiously optimistic. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we're all trying to be optimistic.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
It gives me another question here. What advice do you give merchants during this strange time? Is there anything, someone that is struggling, what kind of advice do you give them? Is there any kind of sage wisdom, or do you just kind of go cross your fingers, hope everything's gonna be all right? I mean,
no, not necessarily. I mean, I think that for manufacturers, specifically in the home category, don't wait to invest in your e-commerce business. I mean, I know the industry in many ways has been scared to embrace it because of how important brick and mortar is in this channel, right? Again, to your point earlier, touching, feeling, like that does matter to a lot of customers. So brick and mortar is still a huge piece. If you can't, invest in a fully integrated e-commerce program at this time, like you can still dip your toes in the water, and perfection is the enemy of progress, right? So get in and do it. And then I think secondly, there's while there's still a significant amount of unpredictability in demand, e-commerce has become more predictable, and not having enough inventory has become a huge problem. And the most sophisticated retailers out there, they have really great forecasting tools that are seldom used by manufacturers that are a little bit less sophisticated. So if manufacturers are going to decrease their purchasing because their overall monthly demand is lower, then at least don't make it, don't take broad brush strokes, right? Like take a scalpel and really think about what you're going to decrease your inventory in.
Yeah. Great. I mean, it's the whole thing just took everybody out of whack, basically.
Yeah, well, totally agree with you about dipping your toe. There's so many opportunities now to get online and with less friction than there used to be. You could even start off with just, Bart and I talk about this all the time. It's like just put an Instagram page on, sell from there. If you've got this nice niche product, and it doesn't have to be just furniture, it could be anything. I mean, the barriers are just dropped. I mean, there's just no reason why anyone shouldn't be investing in digital right now. All right, so we're going to round this out. We're going to talk a little bit about you, Josh. We're going to put you in the spotlight here. Being an entrepreneur is challenging work. Managing your time and energy is critical, especially now working from home. It's even more important, especially if you're married and have kids. So any tips or experiences that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think, tips for entrepreneurs, I think specifically, the work is endless. COVID, no COVID, as an entrepreneur, you are there to lead, inspire, and grow. There's always something you can be doing. One of my favorite Mark Cuban quotes is, work like there's somebody working 24 hours a day to take it from you. So this is something that motivates me every single day. And I always think about that. How do we make sure that we survive and thrive, again, regardless of COVID? But that said, there's a balance there. And I think you need to really give thought to why are you working, right? So probably fulfillment, financial freedom, more time with your family, and other things. And, I try to balance the motivation with why I'm actually working. And for me personally, a big part of it is spending time with my family. So, I make sure to focus on that now. It's the journey, not the destination. So thinking you're going to have more time in 10 years is just not realistic. Taking care of yourself and your family, and for me, in order to do that, a huge part of my time is spent on just building and refining a great team. The team is what drives the business, not me. So having a best-in-class team is what allows me to have the balance that I need to see my wife and kids every morning, every night, and the entire weekend. And I would say that one of my favorite Steve Jobs quotes is, it doesn't make sense to hire smart people and tell them what to do. We hire smart people so they can tell us what to do. So,
That's great.
So to me, that means build a great team and empower them to take risks, make mistakes, and make decisions.
Yeah, that's great. You sound like a good manager. Okay, so what's the best advice you'd give an entrepreneur or startup right now? What's the best tip you give someone who has an idea and is struggling to move their idea forward?
Yeah, it's tough, right? And particularly in this time, right? But I think that the advice that I have is applicable, COVID or no COVID. The first is the importance of business mentors. I've had about 5 mentors over the last 10 years, and each of them still play a different and equally important role in both my business life and my personal life, ranging from a mentor that I met in school that helped me design this kind of oddball path that I'm now on that seems to have, somehow worked, to my now business partner, particularly in the early years, and an industry-specific consultant that's evolved into an executive coach for me. And then even my family, my parents, my wife. I mean, I think that, learning from somebody else's experience who has done what you are aspiring to do, it's not only humbling, but it's powerful. And I think that it helps with the heartache during the lonely times of entrepreneurship, and it will prevent you from making some mistakes, along the way. And the other thing is, and this is a Jeff Bezos thing, which I love. So build lots of small buildings, not just one tall building. So he said if you decide that you're going to do only the things you're going to work, you're going to leave a lot of opportunity on the table. So what it means is that you got to try things, place small bets, plant seeds. Some of them will grow, some won't. It's really the only way to evolve as a company. But that said, I think the caution, particularly during this odd time that we're in, is I've learned my lesson in not placing all the exciting bets at the same time when you're privately funded, and you want to be debt free. So it's important to try things, but also understand your financials, make sure that you're managing cash flow properly.
Yeah, and getting back to the entrepreneurs right now in this special time. Bart, what's my favorite quote? Never let a good crisis go to waste. I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunities out there, and for people who have ideas. What you said about mentorship and feedback I think it's really critical, especially in business, that people should really look to others and try not to do everything on their own. So I totally agree with your reply there. What would you do if you weren't doing this, Josh?
So, if you were to ask me 10 years ago, I'd probably tell you some type of corporate law. And in that regard, because of the amount of work that went into the education, not to mention the cost, I've kept my license. I still pay my $500 a year bar fees, as painful as it is, and I still do the continuing legal education courses. But with the last 10 years and the experience that I've had, there's been great times. There's been really challenging times, working with a team to build, something out of nothing. I've now had the taste of building, growing, and collaborating with an excellent team, working with high-level talent. I could never go back and not do something like this. I don't know what industry it would be. Maybe health and fitness infused with technology. I don't know. But for me, whatever it would be, I would need to find a way to have a stake in that business at this point.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. I asked this question on all of our interviews, and it's always very similar. It's like, I don't know if it would be this, but it would be similar. It would be because it's like you have to have the passion. You have to have the passion for what you're doing, and that's seems to be a similar thread. All right,
I bet you that corporate law stuff comes in handy.
Oh, and you can also say, "I'm not a lawyer." Oh, that's right, I am.
I've actually said that to people. Sometimes I actually do forget.
Wait a minute, I am one.
All right, final question. I always like to throw this fun one in at the end. What is the last thing you bought online?
There may be some irony in the answer to this question.
Furniture.
The other day on Amazon, no, it's not furniture, not that. Sticky notes. So I manage my life in Microsoft Outlook, but I need to have some sticky notes to write. There you go, exactly. To write down that random stuff that when you're in the middle of a meeting, you're in the middle of a thought or whatever, and something pops in your head. I don't have time to digitize that. So
just off camera is a whole board full of sticky notes, so I can relate.
So I try and integrate them into Outlook and create tasks, once I build up more than 5. But I have to have those handy, and I just bought a bunch of colors the other day. My daughters were loving it.
I'm a what do you call it? Someone who's fallen off the wagon of GTD. Ever hear of GTD? Getting things done. It's a methodology. Basically the methodology is get it out of your brain and put it somewhere. I'm totally down with that because I have a little bit of ADHD and so I can't. So these things are a lifesaver.
I hear you. The amount of emails that I send myself at 2 a.m. that
I do that too. Yeah. Don't forget this, dummy. All right, we're gonna wrap it up. Josh, this is your platform. Shameless plug. Plug anything you like. Tell people where to find you if you'd like, or just whatever you want to plug.
Okay, quick shameless plug. That webinar series that we talked about earlier, in 3 one-hour sections, it really covers the full spectrum, regardless of where you are in creating an e-commerce strategy on the wholesale side, not the B2C side, which is we could do a whole nother topic on that. But in selling to internet retailers, from product selection, choosing the right partners, promotions, 2-day delivery, it covers quite a bit in a short amount of time. And it's accessible from the homepage of our website, www.brandjump.com. And I hope you guys come look at it.
Awesome. Great. Well, that's it for this episode. Josh, I want to thank you for coming on, and keep us in mind. If you have any interesting developments, we'll have you on again.
Thank you very much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Josh. Great interview.
Take care, guys.